Part 13. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 121. Chapter 121 Takano, Part 1. The night is cool as water, and the silver moon is like a knife. When a dazzling Olympic missile was pierced in the dark night sky, the half-elf palace was instantly boiled. When you look down at the high altitude, you will see that the silver moon guards who were originally guarded in the east of the palace and the south of the palace suddenly turned the gunhead and killed the inside of the palace. Suddenly, the two teams did not encounter too many obstacles at all, as if two fire dragons rushed to the palace in the palace. Here, they finally encountered stubborn resistance from the guards. Woo dash! The harsh horn echoed over the palace, and instantly awakened the entire Silver City. The city of Garden that claims to have never been captured is now difficult to escape the disaster. Well. Colin pushed open the door of the temple, raised the huge coffin, and strode forward. At this time, 1,000 St. Hilda family guards have gathered under the command of the Turton Knight. Colin looked around in the crowd and said clearly, "Tonight, our only mission is to protect Ms. Vera. Guardian Ms. Vera. Guardian Ms. Vera. Nympho." The guards hit the armor on the chest, and the sound of the sound sounded and rolled. "Kill!" Colin ordered. The 1,000-person team immediately rushed to the south gate of the palace. Because the Union Guard in this direction has rebelled, they have not encountered too much resistance all the way. But after getting out of the palace door, they met a semi-elf guard who came to support the palace. Due to the lag of information transfer, the Silver Month guard opposite did not know what happened in the palace at all, but after hearing the tone of the help, he led the army to rush over. At this time, the murderous San Hilda family guards naturally thought that the horn was for them, so they decisively pulled their swords. "Kill!" The Turd Knight yelled and took the lead to rush up. Although the number of semi-elves is good, this race is not good at force. The so-called Silver Moon Guards are just a flower stand and have not experienced many cruel battles. Can it be comparable to the Northern Army that really killed from the War of Blood and Fire? What's more, because of Vera's death, the San Hilda Guards at this time can be considered a sore army. They have long wanted to set off a bloody storm in Union City, but it was just always being pressed by Colin. Now, after Colin completely loosened this beast's cricket, this group of San Hilda family guards who had been born and killed for a long time immediately rushed to the semi-elves as soon as possible. As a result, the battle was fierce from the beginning, and the narrow palace door also instantly became a flesh and blood mill. Colin did not step forward to participate in the battle, but instead stood at the back to observe the situation of the battlefield with the coffin. At the same time, he also continued to look for the existence of high-end knights among the semi-elf soldiers. According to the intelligence provided by Kathy, there is no 5th order knight in the semi-elf kingdom, and the highest is the 4th order. Don't think that the 4th order is not high. In fact, compared with the previous 3rd order, the 4th order is qualitative. The occupation of this world can be divided into 9 order according to strength, but every 3rd level is actually a large level. Just like breaking the 6th level, it is to enter the sanctuary, and it is said that if you break through the 9th order, you can become a god. Similarly, after breaking through the 3rd order, it is generally called extraordinary. At this time, the strength of the professional will also have a qualitative change. From this name, it can be seen that professionals with more than 3 levels have no longer belong to mortals. If there is still a hint of over-level challenges before the 3rd order, but once you enter the 4th order and cross a large level, there is basically no such miraculous thing. There is only one possibility that the mortal who wants to kill an extraordinarian below the 4th order take a life. Professionals above the 4th level are not God, and their energy and strength will be exhausted. As long as they wear their combat effectiveness with their lives, they can naturally win and win it. Because of this, when Colin found that he was drinking the blood of the Turd Cavaliers, it was not too surprised when he was promoted to the 4th order. If this big level is going across, I am afraid that more blood is needed. However, Colin looked around, but found that there seemed to be no Fourth Order Knight in the semi-elves in front of him. However, when Colin was a little disappointed, he suddenly felt the threat. Before thinking about it, he quickly threw the coffin in his hand and rolled himself on the spot. Boom! Suddenly, a loud noise, the ground at Colin's original standing was blown up by a golden light. Subsequently, a huge white figure, wearing a heavy and strict armor, holding a shield with a left hand, a gun with a gun, the tank usually rushed towards Colin. In the huge footsteps, the earth seemed to be trembling. Colin looked back, and his face was pale, and the other giant figure of the opponent completely shrouded him. Before thinking about it, Colin's backhand is a sword, stabbing the gap at the neck of the armor knight. Blade of Judgment flying on it. The huge power from the sword was flying in an instant and hit the wall on the side of the palace door. But he didn't seem to have any big deal. When he got up, he ran away in the direction of the Third Cavaliers. Sure enough, the gap between Fourth and Third Order is too large, and this cannot be played at all. Colin rushed quickly, but the armored knight behind him was not slow. Moreover, he seemed to know the identity of Colin, and he also knew how to capture the king of the king first. Along the way, the guards of the St. Hilda family quickly stepped forward to try to rescue Colin, but they were all shot by the semi-final armor knight. Finally, the Cavaliers of Turd also noticed the situation of Colin, and quickly left the front enemy to prepare to return to the rescue. The semi-elf armored knight also seemed to be aware of bad, and his feet kicked the ground sharply. Boom! The earth exploded instantly, and the gravel soil flew around. The semi-elf armor knight turned into a golden light and hit the back of Colin. Oh! Colin only felt like he was hit by a truck and vomited blood in his mouth. Ding! A long gun top on the chest armor of Colin. The half-elf armor knight opened the mask and revealed the majestic face of Founder. By the Vicaramate angle, please let your men give up resistance. ArmyBuilding family has no intention and expensive. Oh! A dagger inserted the side waist of the half-elf knight along the gap of the armor. He whispered and yelled, "I don't know how good." Seeing that Colin didn't stop, he still wanted to resist. The half-elf cavaliers no longer hesitated. The long gun in his hands immediately pressed down and penetrated Colin's chest. Master Viscount, when the Third Cavaliers saw this scene, they roared and rushed over. The half-elf cavaliers are preparing to get rid of Colin to meet the Teld Cavaliers, but they found that the Angle Angel, who was dead, suddenly laughed and hugged it. The half-elf cavaliers were so scared that they stirred their long guns in their hands as crazy, trying to break away from Colin's arms. However, Colin's hands held the half-elf knights and yelled, "Come, delivery." This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 122. Chapter 122 Super, Part 2. Alas! Due to the huge gap between power, Colin was still thrown on the ground by the half-elf cavaliers. But because of the delay at this moment, he had no time to return the gun to deal with the Teld knights who rushed back. Oh! A golden light flashed, and the back of the half-elf cavaliers was cut out of a half-meter-long blood outlet, and the whole person was almost split in half. Ah! He yelled, threw a long gun in his hand, tried to force the Teld knight, and then turned and ran. Unfortunately, the surrounding Santa Hilda family guards have gathered around and blocked his way. In the end, the half-elf cavaliers were still caught up with a sword that pierced the eyebrows and died on his knees. After his death, the semi-elf guards who had already fell on the wind immediately fought again and ran away. Master Viscount, you're okay." The Cavaliers of Turd looked at the blood mouth of Colin's chest, his eyes were dull. Colin was so painful at this time, but he still raised his hand, pointing to the coffin on the ground, and the weak said, "Guardian, Vera, Miss, out of the city." The Turd Cavaliers turned red instantly, kneeling on one knee, and solemnly vowed, "You can rest assured, I will definitely send Miss Villa's remains out of the city, even if the price of life is given." Colin seemed to have finally got his wish, his eyes closed, and his calf kicked. No sound. The Teld Cavaliers and the soldiers present were solemnly saluting to Colin, and then raised the coffin and went on the road again. Nympho. After the people left, the battlefield here recovered calm again. Occasionally, some passers-by who probed the brain passed, but after seeing the tragic situation here, they also avoided it from far away, and they couldn't stand the strong bloody smell. Under the shining of Yunyu, one of the piles of corpses suddenly moved. Then, the resurrected corpse climbed towards the corpse of the semi-elven armor knight. "Guru, Guru." The creepy sucking sound quietly sounded, and it seemed extremely strange on this hell-like battlefield. Several foraging black crows fell, but immediately left with wings and left quickly, as if there was something terrible here. Colin was still taking the blood of the Fourth Order semi-elf knight. With more and more blood inhaled, Colin was surprised to find that his body showed signs of fever again. Moreover, this time the fever seemed particularly obvious, and it could even be said to be aggressive, so that he couldn't help sweating up and down. At the same time, a strong sense of hunger shrouded Colin, which made him unable to stop. The corpse of the half-elf cavaliers is drying at the speed of the naked eye. I am afraid that it will soon be sucked into a corpse. Colin's stomach quickly bulged, but he still didn't mean to stop. Because he is hungry. This spiritual strong hunger and more obvious physical satiety are extremely contradictory, but they exist at the same time. Finally, the corpse of the semi-elf knight had completely dry and could no longer squeeze a drop of blood. Colin raised his head and breathed a sigh of relief. The dryness of his body made him close his eyes comfortably and seemed to enjoy the wonderful feeling of this kind of strength. But soon, this comfortable and beautiful feeling disappeared. Colin was surprised to find that the blood of his whole body was running crazy, boiling. Okum. A weird vibration sound came out of the Colin body, as if hundreds of bees were making a harsh twitch. This tremor is gradually unified, and the tone is changing the edge. In the end, it finally became a sound of bell-like. Dang dang dang. At this time, Colin seemed to be a cooked lobster, and his whole body skin became flushed. It was even covered with small red dots with dense numbness, as if too much blood in the body was trying to exudate. Boom. The heart of Colin had stopped beating again. He couldn't help covering his heart, because the beating and stills just now made him almost screaming. Boom. It's again. Ah. Colin finally couldn't help growing. At the same time, I was wondering, what happened to myself? Is the response to the Fourth Order so big? Boom. 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 His heart seemed to have suddenly greeted his vitality and beating faster and faster. Colin yelled, no longer going to control what happened, and no longer suppress the body's changes. As the sudden recovery heart recovered, the blood of Colin's body rolled more violently. And the muscles of his whole body are constantly growing due to congestion, and even the blood-red texture began to cover it, just like a certain scale armor, full of mysterious atmosphere. The continuous rise of blood pressure caused the blood vessels of Colin to slowly rise, like a blue-purple steel cable entangled on his body. The huge pain made Colin's eyes open, trembling, and sweaty blocks exuded, but the high temperature of the body surface quickly evaporated. Alas! In the pain, Colin smashed on the ground with a fierce punch. The fist of the blue tendons and the earth hit the earth fiercely, splashing a circle with a substantial intangible ripple, spreading towards the surroundings. The ground also freshes instantly, showing a clear boxing print. Ah, ah, ah. Colin began to wave his fists, smashing large and small boxing prints on the ground, and a large number of shock waves spread along the ground to the surroundings, like a small earthquake. Bang bang. Intersection. Colin's heart jumped faster and faster, as if a tireless powerful pump retook over the blood circulation of Colin and pushed the cycle to a terrible situation. A crazy flowing blood rammed in the Colin body, as if trying to find a vent. Colin's body began to grow bigger under the crazy surging blood stimulation. The original armor could not bear the swelling body, and it was swollen and split. Colin's spirit at this time was already a little stunned. The whole world in front of him has been covered with a layer of blood-red tulle in his eyes. Especially the crooked silver moon, at this time, it is bright that it seems to be dripping bleeding. Countless blood mist floats from the surrounding corpses and brings together Colin weak. Dang! After a burst of bells, the whole world seemed to be quiet. Colin bowed his waist and kept shaking, as if something was constantly trying to struggle from his body. Alas! Colin hit the ground at the end, and then calmed down. At this time, his eyes have completely become a scarlet color, and there is no trace of human emotions in it. The naked skin is covered with blood-red mysterious lines, as well as his back. The muscles there are constantly bulging, like two protruding horns. Oh! The horn rose, and a pair of black bat wings broke out. The bat wings slowly opened and stretched out more than 10 meters away to both sides. Colin stood up. At this time, he had turned into a little giant close to 4 meters. The huge bat wing waved backwards, rolling up for a while. In the bloody moon in the sky, Colin showed sharp teeth and suddenly roared silently. This chapter is finished. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 123. Chapter 123 Bait. Outside the gate of Union City. When the rebels began to attack the palace, the Cavaliers of Lego heard the sound of fighting from the city. As a result, the Angle family's loyal knights summoned the army in the slightest hesitation. Brothers, Union City is wrong, but our lord is still in the city, facing huge danger. So, can you dare to enter the city with me and rescue the master and Miss Willa? Kill into the city. Kill into the city. Kill into the city. Nympho. The army brought by the Raider Knight is basically composed of the veterans of the original Angra family, so loyalty is undoubted. Moreover, in the face of the legendary weakness, these proud northern generals will not take the initiative to shrink. That's too shameful. Kill. With a roar, the Raig Knight rushed up towards Union City. Enemies, enemies. The semi-elf guards on the tower immediately rang alert. The arrows fell thinly and did not cause much harm to the offensive parties outside the city. The pace of the Raig Knights who rushed at the front did not stop. He was wearing an armor covering his body, as if he was turning into a furious bear. The heavy footsteps leave clearly visible marks on the earth. The faster he rushed, and he almost became a golden lightning. Alas! The gorgeous crystal gate was crushed directly by him. The Raig Knights who rushed into the city shot out a few unpleasant semi-elves and flew out, and roared in their mouths. Who dare to stop me? Half-elf palace, the main hall. The fierce sound of fighting and the strong bloody smell comes from outside the temple, which is restless. The old king sat high in the throne, not saying a word, and his eyes deep. Prince William came out of the hall quickly, with blood and migration on his body. Your Majesty, the situation outside has basically been confirmed. The rebels played the banner of the Sci-fi family, participated in the two wings of the Union Guard, and the two wings controlled by the Duke of Luther. Sure enough, it is Sci-fi. There was a helpless face on the old king's face. I have long realized that they still hid in a corner of Union City, and then deliberately pretended to be a fast-moving old death. The appearance is to attract them. Haha, I didn't expect it. They even picked out now. Your Majesty, what should we do now? The old king was silent, and then asked, where are those in the north? When the rebels came in, they rushed out of the palace. Immediately send someone to find them. Prince William was a little puzzled. Your Majesty, it's all at this time, why do we have to control these northern people? Even if they successfully rushed out of Union City, there is nothing to do. The old king's gloomy eyes stared at his son and said angrily, in case they fell in the hands of the rebels, and even Villa's body was blasphemy, then even if we successfully calmed the rebellion, guess the saint will the Duke Hilda go to ArmyBuilding family. Prince William suddenly sweated, and he nodded quickly, yes, I will arrange it. Wait, the old king called his son again, do you know which direction they are running in? Prince William shook his head, I don't know, but I will send someone to search the city. Search for a fart, do you get so many people now, what should I do if the rebels on the palace side? Prince William opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. The old king sighed and instructed, didn't the army of the Anders family just go outside Union? In which direction did they just go to Union City? Yes, Prince William suddenly realized, they are outside the gate of the South City, so those northern people must be running towards the South City gate. No, if they are smart, they will definitely not run to the South City gate, so, you send someone to chase in the opposite direction and go to the northern gate. Prince William took a while before returning to the taste, nodded again and again, yes, Majesty, I will arrange it. However, the Turd Cavaliers took Vera's body all the way north. On the way, they encountered several waves of obstacles, but they were repelled by them one by one. However, after the war, the St. Hilda family guards were also suffering heavy losses. At this time, only half of the Guardian guards were left, and almost everyone was injured. But their eyes are still firm, as if no one can stop them from moving forward. The Teld Cavaliers, please stay, another wave of Silver Moon Guard blocked the way. The semi-elf knight headed by the semi-elf knight opened the noodles and sincerely persuaded, His Majesty the King is worried about the safety of Miss Willa's body, and he is unwilling to be hurt again. Everyone will not be invaded. The Teld knight was unmoved and sneered, do you guarantee, what guarantee do you take, he, go back and calm the rebellion before telling me these big words. Now, the San Hilder family guards just want to escort Miss Villa's body to leave Union City. Who do I dare to stop? Her Majesty, the Knight of Turd, there is really no malice, please believe us. No malicious, the Turd Cavaliers sneered and interrupted. Why did you block us in the palace before, and still block our connection with the outside world? This, the half-elf Cavaliers suddenly said. Obviously, the Teld Cavaliers did not want to say more to each other, and immediately pulled out the sword and yelled, either, let the road open, or decide to fight. Make your choice. The semi-elf knight looked dignified and did not answer. But there is no way to open the road. The Turn Cavaliers obviously understood the other person, and immediately sang, kill. Then he took the lead and rushed up. The two sides immediately fought into a ball. But no matter how fierce it is, both sides deliberately avoided one place the position of Villa's coffin. Obviously, the Union Guard also understands the importance of the coffin, and is afraid that accidentally affects it in the battle. But just as the fierce fighting of both sides was, a healthy figure suddenly rushed out of the darkness. I saw that he was extremely fast, and he rushed to the coffin in the center of the battlefield. The Turd Cavaliers who kept paying attention to the coffin immediately retreated to the opponent and yelled back, hurry, stop him, his goal is Miss Villa. The half-elf Cavaliers who played against the Turd Cavaliers were also shocked at this time, and they yelled almost at the same time, stop him. The two knights who were still killed, at this time, they chose the temporary truce and rushed to the coffin parked in the center of the battlefield. But unfortunately, they were still one step late. The sudden appearance of the mysterious knight seemed to be a tank in the charge, all the soldiers who blocked all the way, and came to the coffin without blocking. Subsequently, without hesitation, the big sword in his hand decisively drawn a golden semi-arc, bombarding on Villa's coffin. Alas! In the huge impact sound, the coffin was split. Countless small wood chips fly around. No. The Teld Cavaliers and half-elf Cavaliers made a desperate roar at the same time. But immediately, their expressions frozen on their faces. Because the center of the battlefield is flying, only wood chips, without bones. That coffin. It's an empty coffin. The half-elf Cavaliers immediately reacted and scolded, "Poor, this is a bait." And the Turd Cavaliers also looked at the flying wood chips stupidly, and only returned to God for a while. Is this the strategy of Angle Venture? So, Miss Willa, where is it? This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Ludo Busroot. Chapter 125. Chapter 125 Bloody Night, Part 1. Half-Elf Royal Palace. The killing is still continuing. It has become a blood and fire ocean, and the sound of fighting and screaming intertwined into a hell-like magic sound. But the partial palace where Vera and Colin lived were particularly quiet. In the clear moonlight, a tall figure suddenly appeared outside the partial hall. Step. Under the attraction of footsteps, a small head quietly explored from the dark corner. And its owner is Vera. She clenched the staff in her hand and carefully stared at the figure that came in from outside the temple. Until seeing the fox mask on the man's face, Vera came out of the corner and asked softly, "Excuse me, you are the Fox Knight?" What the voice of Angra said. Fox Knight didn't speak, and then nodded stiffly after a while. Varamid's breath and asked again, "Are you the knights of the Angra family? What do you call?" Fox Knight said nothing, but turned around and walked out. Vera stunned, and the cold attitude of the other party confused her. But thinking of Colin's instructions, she followed up quickly. "Excuse me, where are you going to take me?" Fox Knight is still silent. Varadid had a mouth, completely abandoned the exchange, and obediently followed this strange knight out. At this time, the rebels were concentrating on attacking the inner court of the palace, so the periphery of the palace was extremely calm. Occasionally, the palace servant and palace lady who ran out of panic and fled out. They were busy escape at this time, and did not notice the abnormalities of Villa and the Fox Knight. Vera has already replaced the clothes of ordinary maids, and touched her face with blood. On such a night, it was really difficult to recognize if she did not distinguish it carefully. The two came all the way to the open-air garden in the backyard of the palace. The blood rose here had long been ruined by the grandson of the king and replaced with other flowers. "What do we do here?" Vera finally couldn't help asking. But the Fox Knight still did not answer. Just when Vera was about to lose patience to the weird man, a familiar voice suddenly sounded, "Miss Villa, good evening." Wyra raised her head and saw Queen Aisha appearing in the garden. "Knight, good evening, His Royal Highness." "Miss Willa, I am entrusted by the Viscount Angle to take you away from the palace." This, Vera suddenly hesitated. Because Collins did not tell her what happened in the palace that day in the Queen's palace, she always thought that Prince Tup was going to kill herself. As the mother of Prince Tup, Queen Aisha was obviously identified by Vera as an irreparable person. Queen Aisha seemed to hesitate, and he took out a badge and showed it to Vera. Roaring White Bear, Villa recognized the Angle family badge at a glance, which was no longer doubt about Queen Aisha. "I believe it now. Hurry up and go with me, the palace is not safe." "Good." But just when Villa was about to leave with Queen Aisha, the door of the garden was suddenly blocked by a team of semi-elf guards. Queen Aisha saw the EuropeanAmbience badge on them, and just wanted to speak to scold the other party to open the road, but heard a familiar voice. "Miss Willa, His Royal Highness, where are you going?" "Sith," Queen Aisha frowned, "why are you here?" "Then where should I be?" Sith laughed, "attacking the Duke of Lutter in the palace, and I must implement the order of the Duke of St. Hilda. Kill Vera." Hearing Sith's words, Villa's whole person was froze on the spot. She never thought that her adoptive father would kill herself. "What do you say, father? Kill me?" Sith glanced at Vera with compassion, and said indifferently, "Sorry, Miss Villa, I just ordered to act." "No, impossible," Villa shook his head with a stunned face. And Sis has turned to look at Queen Aisha, sneered, "His Royal Highness, when I learned that Miss Vera was dead Prince Youtube's hand, I knew that you did not perform our original plan, so, as soon as I entered the palace, I stared at you. Sure enough, you really betrayed it." Queen Aisha also sneered, "Sis, now Miss Villa is still alive, could you dare to kill her, the blood of the members of the Saint Hilda family, do you dare to stick to it?" Sishaha smiled, and she looked like a bamboo in her chest. "His Royal Highness, Miss Villa was killed by Prince Tup. This is something that all semi-elf nobles know. How could I kill it? But so many people are present, dare you guarantee that they don't leak secrets?" Queen Aisha was still doing the last effort. Sith looked around and laughed, "You don't need to worry about this small problem. I will let them go to cut a knife later if this is not enough to keep the secret. Hey, the corpse of the two big beauties, presumably they are all interested." Hearing this sentence, the breath of the guards around Sith suddenly became a bit heavy. Queen Aisha's face and Villa's complexion instantly became pale. "Kill them." Sith waved his hand, and a group of Elves guards slowly gathered. Alas! The Fox Knight pulled out the sword without fear and blocked Willa. Vera also raised the staff in his hand, and began to sing gently. "Don't let her complete the cast." With the yelling of Sith, the semi-elf guards no longer hesitated and rushed up decisively. Hua! Intersection. At this moment, the garden suddenly blown the wind, and the sky was dark. Queen Aisha looked up in surprise, and saw a huge figure fall from the sky. A pair of huge black wings completely covered the moonlight, covering half of the garden under its shadow. Alas! The giant landed heavily and gave an anger roar to Sissi and others. The endless terrorist breath spread, letting everyone present feel a shudder from the depths of the soul. "You, what monster are you?" Sith's eyes were glaring, and his tone began to tremble. Colin's face was shrouded in a blood mist, and the huge body and black wings were no wonder that Sis could not recognize. "You all have to die," Khalil roared, huge arms full of hard bloodlines waved out. Alas! 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 Several semi-elf guards in front of him quickly set up the shield, but were still smashed out by huge anti-shocks. Seeing the situation was not good, he turned around and ran. Boom! Colin shocked the black wings sharply, and the violent airflow instantly filled the entire garden. Under the support of the airflow, he seemed to turn into a black feather arrow, and he came to the top of Sith's head in a blink of an eye. Call! A giant hand suddenly leaned down and grabbed Sis's head. Click! Sis's head, like a bottle cap, was twisted on the spot. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 126. Chapter 126 Bloody Night, Middle. Brother, what happened outside? In the prison, Anna listened to the faintly shouting and killing outside, and couldn't help asking. Earl Evan listened to his head for a while and doubted, is the Northern Army so soon arrived in Union City? But then he shook his head again. No, even if the death of Vera's death when he received the death of Villa, he immediately entered the semi-elf kingdom, this time only a few days of effort, and he couldn't get to Union City. At this moment, the heavy prison iron door suddenly opened from the outside. Earl, Miss Anna, please forgive me late. Looking at the half-elf cavaliers outside the iron gate, Earl Evan nodded with a smile. Omar Cavaliers, you come to you. Anna looked at the semi-elf knight who was bowing to her brother, and suddenly woke up. This was probably the inside of the St+ family in the semi-elf kingdom. Omar Cavaliers, can you tell us what happened outside? Of course, Miss Anna, the former half-elf royal family of the Sevo family, launched a coup. They countered the Duke of Lutter, and there was a group of Silver Moon Guards who were attacking the inner court of the palace at this time. It was for this reason that I had the opportunity to sneak into the prison and release the two. The Syvarov family. Earl Evan touched his chin, with a strange smile on his face. They really chose a good time to launch a coup. Brother, don't think about it, let's quickly leave this ghost place, Anna urged. Okay, let's go. The three left the prison quickly and did not encounter much obstruction along the way. At this time, the Madin family was overwhelmed by himself, and he would definitely not set up heavy soldiers in prison. What is that? When the three people passed by the royal garden, Anna suddenly pointed at the tall figure in the distance and asked. At this time, Colin was turning into a blank cyclone, and he kept harvesting the lives of the semi-elf guards gathered in the royal garden. Earl Evan looked at it for a while and said in confusion, "Why do this guy still have wings? Is it the elves' druid?" "But druid is said to have been extinct long ago," Anna retorted. "Legend, trustworthy or not, who knows if they will secretly leave the inheritance." Earl, Miss Anna, Queen Aisha seemed to be there, the sharp-eyed semi-elf knight suddenly reminded. "Queen Esha," Earl Evan was interested in, "go, let's see." "The devil, he is the devil, run." At this time, the semi-elf guards in the garden had long been killed by Colin, and they fled out. Alas! Alas! Colin followed the heavy pace and chased up, and with his huge body and the black wings that stretched out, it really meant a little eagle chasing the chicken. When the chicks were scattered, Earl Evan became highlighted. For the twin eyes of Colin, Anna couldn't help blurting out, "What monster are you?" "UTM are monsters," Khalil roared. Suddenly, he kicked the ground sharply, waving his wings, and the whole person rushed to Anna like Li Xian's arrow. Boom! The place where Anna was originally was like a bomb, and countless thin stones flew around. When the dust was set, I saw a huge pit that had 2 meters deep. And Anna has already flashed aside. Although she held a huge wide sword, her figure was unexpectedly flexible and healthy. The complicated pattern on the surface of the wide sword began to flash with dazzling electric light under the stimulus of the holy light, as if the electric snake wrapped around the sword one by one, exuding an extremely dangerous atmosphere. With a snoring, Anna's whole person seemed to be a silver lightning, and she suddenly scored towards Colin. Colin narrowed his eyes and took a deep breath. I saw that he suddenly shook hands and fists, gathered all the blood of his whole body, gathered to the fist, and formed an unparalleled fisting style, and he hit it suddenly. Dang! The fist sword intersects, and the sound of gold and stones was made. The huge invisible impact suddenly broke out, setting off a wave of horrible air waves, spreading around. The python-like silver lightning came from a wide sword, and quickly climbed up his whole body along the fist of Colin. Colin only felt the numbness of a burst, making his body's strength dissipated very fast. "Get away!" Colin shouted, and the other poisonous snake was generally revealed, bombarding to Anna's noodle door. Anna's dexterous flashes, escape again. Boom! The earth was smashed out of a large hole by Colin, and the gravel splashed out. Collins was unwilling, chasing Anna's trace, and constantly punching. Alas! 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 For a while, he was like a demolition machine, and the buildings near the entire royal garden were smashed by him. Anna can only retreat step by step, quite embarrassed. "Miss Anna, I'll help you." The Omar knight yelled and erected the giant kite shield, almost waiting for him to be in front of him, and his feet suddenly worked. Boom! The earth was immediately depressed, and the Omar cavaliers quickly rushed towards Colin through the anti-shock power. Boom! 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 He rushed faster and faster, and his pace became heavier, and the mark on the ground was deeper than one. When he rushed to Colin, the whole person had turned into a golden light. Colin suddenly turned back and smashed into the kitchen shield of the Omar Cavaliers. Boom! The fist collided with the kite shield fiercely, making a loud noise. Such a horrible frontal impact made Colin can't help but take 2 steps to stand up. However, the Omar Cavaliers were even more unbearable, and the kite shield in his hand was completely broken, and a large number of broken shields flew around. He himself was directly brought up by this horrible power and hit the walls behind. Oh, Amal was shocked with a sip of blood. When Colin was about to solve this soft persimmon, Anna behind rushed up again. Dang! This time, Colin turned around and clamped the opponent's broadsword directly with both hands. The gap in power made Anna unable to pull out her weapon at all, but she didn't seem to care and let go of the hoe directly. The small body mentioned violently, rising along the wide sword body. Alas! She actually pulled 2 short swords from her waist, and went straight towards Colin's eyes. Colin took a deep breath and opened his mouth suddenly. Roar! The deafening roar made Anna's figure. Colin took the opportunity to loosen his wide sword, and quickly revealed his right hand, just grabbing Anna, who could not avoid it in the air. Ha! Catch you, little guy. Anna Ying's small waist was caught by Colin with one hand, but she still threw the 2 short swords in her hand towards Colin's head. Colin sneered and was about to avoid his head. But at this moment, a dark smoke suddenly shrouded on his head, making him unable to move. Oh! The 2 short swords were inserted into the lint to the mind, and it seemed as if 2 horns growing. This chapter is finished. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 127. Chapter 127 Bloody Night, Part 2. Are you dead? Earl Evan put away the staff and asked with a sigh of relief. The second son of the St. family turned out to be a mage. However, Anna's face was still dignified. Because she felt that the other party held the giant hand in her waist, there was no sign of relaxation. Just as she was ready to make her brother be careful, the black wing behind the giant in front of her stretched out. The blood pattern of the tedious mysterious mysteries on the body suddenly bloomed with scarlet light, as if a certain ancient law formation opened at this moment. Ah! Anna screamed in pain, because Colin's giant hand not only did not relax, but suddenly tightened. Click. Anna found that her ribs were broken for more than half. Wait a minute, please wait a minute, Earl Evan, who was not good, shouted quickly, we are the scent of the Sandplus family, and you should not want to contaminate the blood of the Saint Knight family members. Click. Anna screamed again, and the ribs were cut again. Obviously, the name of the St. family is useless. Don't stop, Earl Evan arched again and again, we really didn't mean to be with you, how can we let my sister go, please ask. Colin stopped and continued to squeeze, while pulling out the short sword on his head with his other hand, he asked, what can you give me? Earl Evan saw that the other party pulled out the short sword on his head as if nothing had nothing to do. Otherwise, let me tell you a secret, so as to exchange for my sister's life. Tell me. You should be a powerful druid. Colin did not answer. Earl Evan smiled and continued, I know where the legendary druid's relic Wild Heart is not enough for this secret enough to exchange for my sister's life. Druid. Clinton suddenly stunned. He did not expect that his current state of transformation was mistaken for druid by the other party. Druid is an exclusive occupation of the elves, but it has died as early as thousands of years ago. Even if the elves before the Huia forest retreat, there is no inheritor of this profession. Legend has it that druid can imitate the forms of various animals to obtain some characteristics and strength of animals. Therefore, the manta wing behind Colin made the other party mistakenly thought he was druid. Colin suddenly felt that the other party's misunderstanding did not seem to be bad. It is better than treating him as a monster or a devil. So, Colin pretended to be a eager look and asked, then you talk about the heart of the wild. Earl Evan coughed twice, saying, it's in the city of Olympic relics Jevely. Colin blinked and shook his head, how do I know you didn't lie to me? Earl Evan seemed to have a bamboo, and pointed to Vera, who was still hiding in the garden, and said, Miss Villa, I am Evan Sandplus, I don't know if you remember me. Colin frowned, and this Evan could recognize Vera at a glance. However, he immediately realized that this guy was also a mage, and he must have seen Vera in Jevely. Hello, Irvin, of course I remember you. Vera came out timidly. Colin's huge and different body of ordinary people scared her. Ha, it really is you, I didn't expect Miss Villa, you didn't die. Hey, the situation in Union City is really more and more interesting. Ah, Anna's scream interrupted Earnside. Don't stop, Earl Evan didn't dare to delay again, and quickly asked Villa, Miss Willa, you should also hear Wild Heart in Jevely Jota collection. Vera nodded, yes. Look, I didn't lie to you, can I put my sister now? Colin shook his head. To be honest, the news was not used at all. Just such a news, not really wildlife, just want to change your sister, how will the members of the ST Plus family be so worthless? Hearing Colin said so, Earl Evan also nodded, yes, yes, when did our Sandplus family become so cheap, what else do you need, even if you say? Colin looked at the other person's bold look, and suddenly raised a big dog to make a big dog. Money, Earl Evan froze, apparently didn't expect the other party to ask for money directly. He picked up his pocket and said helplessly, I didn't bring much money on my body this time. Also, Colin was ready to agree. In fact, he did not intend to kill the woman of the ST Plus family, because it would completely anger the East. Even the ST Plus family will use this as an excuse to send troops to Union City, bringing great variables to the plans to control the semi-elf kingdom. At this time, the outer branches are not wise. No, I did not expect that. Irvin shook his head, and said with a righteous face, just a few hundred gold coins, where is it worthy of our status of our Sandplus family? Colin. Anna just wants to fist an unreliable brother. Otherwise, plus my staff, as my sister's ransom, can you see the right? Colin looked at the huge purple magic crystal inlaid at the top of the staff, and said curiously, how much is your staff worth? Estimated. 100,000 gold coins. Clinton suddenly stared, and for the first time, he saw such a big dog who was so loser. Okay, it's so fixed. Okay, Earl Evan was about to throw the staff to Colin, and he didn't seem to be afraid of him. The other party was so embarrassed that Colin was embarrassed and put on Anna. You immediately get out of Union City. If you let me see you two in the city, I will definitely unscrew your head. Okay, let's leave. Earl Evan lifted his sister, pulled up the Omar knight who was paralyzed by the wall, and hurriedly resigned. After they left, the Colin shook the bat wings and instantly rose. His speed was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared in the dark night sky. Miss Willa, let's go quickly. Okay, Vera nodded, but was a little doubtful, the weird man just now, why do you help us? I don't know either. Queen Aisha shook her head and sprinkled a little lying. In fact, she had aware of the identity of Colin based on the mysterious connection from the deep blood, but she did not tell Vera. Then where are we going now? Go to the Miller family. Miller family, Vera hesitated. Queen Aisha smiled and explained, you are now a life-saving straw for the Miller family. As long as you live safely, the Miller family does not have to bear the crime of killing you. Therefore, they are the people who are most willing to be hurt in Union City now. Wyra was relieved, but thought of the Colin who arranged all this, and couldn't help asking, what about Colin, where is he now? Angle Viscount will soon come to merge with you. That's good. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 128. Chapter 128 to the End, Part 1. In the north gate of the palace, the shadow of the three people hurried out. Well, take a break, the two of you are too heavy, I can't help it. Earl Evan leaned his sister and Omar against the wall, and he lay down and breathed a breath. Why do you want to take the staff to that weird? Anna still couldn't help blame her brother. A valuable staff, even for the St plus family, is not something that can be discarded. Earl Evan's face appeared on his face. That guy is obviously lacking money, so after getting my staff, he will definitely find a chamber of commerce to exchange gold coins. In this way, clues will definitely leave. We can find out who the guy belongs to the forces. If he is not careful enough, he can even find his true identity directly. Anna suddenly realized. Slowly, asked again, do you really think he is druid? Is not it? I think, he is more like a knight. Cavaliers, Earl Evan sat upright and looked unbelievable, are you sure? Anna shook her head, it's not too sure but, the energy emitted on his body is indeed a holy light, although it has some bloody smell, however, it should be the holy light. Yes Earl, I also think that person is a knight. The Omar knight on the side also intervened. Earl Evan really believes this time. After all, the two knights who had handed over to each other believed that the opponent was the knight, and it was estimated that it could not be wrong. Cavaliers, if you are druid, you can be both a semi-elf. Is he the fifth order? Earl Evan knew that Anna and Omar are the fourth order, but they were violent by the other party, and they guessed that the other party should be the fifth order. Who knows that Anna shook her head again, no I have handed over the fifth order knight. The strength of this guy should not reach the fifth level. Then you are still so miserable. Anna rolled her eyes, and said helplessly, the energy of the guy's holy light is not very powerful, but it is very weird, as if, there is no control to the blood of my whole body. I have been taken several times. He disrupted his blood and blood, almost overdue his breath. Moreover, the strength of this guy is extremely terrible. It doesn't look like humans at all, like a giant beast. Also, do you remember my last two swords? I'm very sure, I really inserted into his mind. But maybe you are crooked. After all, the opponent's head has been shrouded in a group of blood mist. Impossible, Anna said firmly. Okay, don't say it, let's leave Union City quickly. If we were caught by that guy again, we would be miserable. Then, our mission. Earl Evan rolled his eyes and said silently, my silly sister, do you still think about the task? Our mission must be no drama. But, isn't Vera dead? Then it means that we still have hope. Walla does not die. It can only be explained that the opponent's means are even more clever than I imagined. Earl Evan shook his head and sighed, unfortunately, I cared about it when I saw the king before, and I was directly died the Wen family was closed. Otherwise, you can also play with this opponent. But now, the overall situation of Union City has been determined, and we have completely played. Let's go, silly sister. Union is empty. Colin watched the Villa 3 from the Miller family in a happy manner to welcome the manor, and then relieved to leave. Vera should be safe now. If the Miller family wants to get rid of the doom of the destruction, she must fight hard to keep this fresh Vera. Coupled with the care of Queen Aisha and the blood slave Zendaya, it must not be any again. And Collins, he also needs to arrange a perfect ending for this coup. Hoo-hoo-hoo. With a huge batwing, Colin quickly returned to the semi-elf palace. At this time, there was a completely hell near the palace court. The life of countless semi-elf is as humble as an ant, and it may disappear in this political vortex at any time. Blood and corpse became the cruel landscape in the palace, and the strong bloody smell permeated the air, almost suffocating. Seeing all this, Colin only felt the blood on his body was getting colder. It's time to end this farce. Khalil said to himself, then rushed to the main hall of the palace in the palace. "What is that?" A guard heard the wind above his head, looked up in surprise, and then saw the rapidly passing figure of Colin. He just wanted to warn his superiors, but the figure had turned into a black lightning, falling from the sky, and instantly rushed into the palace. The guards in front of the temple did not react at this time, and they did not expect that the enemy would rush in this incredible way. When they rushed into the hall to escort, they found that the terrible batty giant had stood in front of the old king. Prince William held the knight's sword, standing behind Colin. His tone trembled. "You, who are you? Do you want to do what?" Colin looked at the old king standing straight in front of him, and suddenly laughed. "Your Majesty, I didn't expect your body to be so tough." The old king faced the weird man who suddenly broke in without panic. Instead, he mocked himself calmly. "It's just a small trick. I wanted to seduce the ambitionist early, but I didn't expect it." "Don't worry, Your Majesty, I have helped you solve the rebel leader." "Do you think this is him?" Colin mentioned Sis's bloody head to the old king. The old king was not afraid, and stared straight at the head and looked at the head carefully, and then smiled and said, "Yes, it was the mouse of the Sci-fi family." After so long, he finally got quiet. Later, he said with a sincere look at Colin, "This warrior, thank you for giving you such a gift to the Maidin family. I don't know how to return you." Colin nodded. "Well, I really need a return gift. Although you say, as long as the Maidwen family has it, we will not be stingy." "Of course you have." Colin laughed a little crazy. "I want you the head." "What?" The old king was shocked and thought he had heard it wrong. But Collins did not react to him at all, and he leaned out of lightning on his right hand and pressed on the head of the old king. Click. Another bottle cap was screwed down. "Father! Your Majesty! Nympho!" The temple suddenly became a mess, and Prince William rushed to Colin as crazy and the semi-elf guards. But Colin opened a huge batwing and waved hard. Boom! The violent air flowed in the temple, and Colin had hit the roof and flew into the air. A round of silver moon outlines the figure of Colin, and the pair of huge wings made him look like an angel who descended to the world. However, his voice was like the magic god. "Your king is dead, escape." In the eyes of a lot of elves, 2 skulls fell from the sky. This chapter is finished. The original vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 129. Chapter 129 to an end, below. Oh. The 2 descendants from the sky make the fierce battlefield beyond below. Then, the identity of those 2 skulls was recognized. His Majesty. Its Master Sith. Nympho. The death of the king and the rebel leader spread the panic irresistible. Whether it is the Union Guard or the rebels, they have begun to think about a question. The boss is dead, what else do we fight? At this time, if people who have a suitable identity in the camp stand out, they can prevent the panic of the soldiers. But unfortunately, even Prince William and Duke Luther looked at the 2 skulls on the ground stupidly at this time, caught in endless panic and wrong, and had no time to take care of the riots. I do know who lost the weapon first, but it was like the first more than Mimino card. Under the chain reaction, the soldiers who fought fiercely in the middle of the night successfully left the weapons and started to run away. When Colin saw this, it was only a wing that walked towards the south gate of Union City. He didn't forget that he had a family army there. Presumably after hearing the fight in the city, the Reg Knight should lead the army to attack. As for the Turd Cavaliers and the San Hilda family guards who undertake bait mission, Colin has not yet gone to manage it. After all, alienation is near, he still divides clearly. Under the huge batwing, Colin's speed was extremely fast. It didn't take long to see the fire caused by the fierce battle of the Chinnan area. That should be the Rider Cavaliers. When Khalil was about to dive to help, he suddenly felt a weakness from the deep blood veins. Is there a time limit for transformation? Colin was shocked and quickly rushed to the recent ground. I'm afraid that the wings will be gone, and then he will become a cake. Nympho. However, the Rhaeg Knight, who was still fighting bravely, suddenly heard a loud noise, as if the earth trembled. The unknown Rhaeg Knights quickly looked around. Then he saw a few semi-elf girls screaming and ran out of a small wooden house next to him. Their appearance of their shirts obviously misunderstood the Raider Knight. The righteousness of the Rego Knight immediately stepped forward and prepared to teach this defeat of this time in the city to try to harm Liangjia women. Alas! The Knight of the Rego kicked the door open and drank, "Boy, get me quickly." His words were stuck in his throat only half. Because, the cavaliers of the Rego recognized the shirtless man who was busy with a bed sheet on himself. It is Colin. 4 eyes are opposite. The air suddenly quietly. Zi, Master Viscoin, Keek, you continue. Colin looked at the look of the Lord Cavalier's brain retracting, and suddenly said silent, "It's not what you think, forget it, don't say, find me for clothes." Yes. Nympho. When the Colin was finished, the Rhaeg Knight hesitated, and still felt that he had to make up for the previous misunderstanding, and then touched the big bald head and laughed. Adult, in fact, you can be fancy to become a lover. It is the honor of those semi-elf civilians. You don't need to climb the roof of the house, tell me directly, I will help you. Shut his mouth. Colin glanced at the cavaliers of the Rego fiercely, and felt that the topic was unclear. But he still felt to explain, I was fighting with people just now, broke my clothes, and then fell into this house. It turned out to be like this. The Rhaeg Knight suddenly realized that he didn't know if he believed it. Colin shook his head, and could only shift the topic of a stiffly, what is your casualties? The casualties are not great, although those semi-elves guards are many, the combat effectiveness is not good. Colin nodded, okay, then you gather troops and follow me. Yes. Nympho. When the first ray of the sun in the dawn was sprinkled again at the head of Unyu City, this beautiful garden city has long lost its former style. This sudden rebellion caused the whole city to be in chaos, and it seemed to open the Pandora magic box to release the dark side of some people's hearts for a long time. Stealing, strong X, arson, killing, countless sins were staged in a turn last night, coupled with the chaos that escaped from the palace, making the entire Unyu City a human hell in a blink of an eye. Of course, this hell is only for the semi-elf civilians. Those semi-elves nobles with private armed and solid castles will not be much affected. For example, the Miller family. Colin, it's really good. At the door of the Miller family manor, Villa rushed into the arms of Colin in surprise, ignoring the eyes of the people around him. Of course, everyone around dared to show any strange vision, and they turned their heads and pretended not to see it. What can I have? Colin hugged the soft body of the girl, sniffing the fragrance of the nose, and suddenly felt that he had tossed for so long, and it was really not busy. After the joy of reunion gradually retreated, Vero left Colin's arms with shame, turned his head to find, and doubted, how about the Turd Cavaliers? He was scattered in the battle. I have sent someone to find them, don't worry. Of course, Colin would not tell Vera that the Turd Knight was thrown out as a bait. Okay, Vera was convinced of Colin. Colin's gaze crossed Vera and looked at Queen Aisha, His Royal Highness. Now Unyu City is chaotic. His Majesty of the King heard that he was killed by chaos, therefore, you need to rush back to the palace to host the overall situation immediately. His Majesty has died. Hearing the news of the death of the old king, everyone screamed and looked different. Queen Aisha also made a terrifying look, but knew that the meticulous Colin seemed to see the hidden pleasure from her eyes. Yes, the Vacus, I will go back to the palace. I don't know if you can please go with Miss Villa? Vera naturally looked at Colin and asked his opinion. Colin's pretending to nod, of course, with the friendship of the semi-elf kingdom and the friendship of the north for so many years, we are certainly willing to extend their hands in the crisis. Later, Colin turned his head to the cavaliers of the Rygo, open in front, escort His Royal Highness and Miss Villa into the palace. Yes, the Rhaeg Knight responded loudly. After the fierce killing overnight, the Semi-Moon Guard has long been fragmented, and the basic preserved strong force of the Angra family has become a pivotal military force in Unyu City. Soon, Colin and his party successfully entered the palace. At this time, the palace had no solemn solemnity, and bloody corpses could be seen everywhere. When Colin walked into the main hall, he saw that Prince William kneeled in front of the old king's body dully, and even Colin and others did not respond. When Queen Aisha saw this, she stepped forward. "William, Miss Vera, and Angle Viscounts are here." Prince William turned his head slowly and looked at the door of the temple, but his eyes still had no focal length. "Miss Villa," Angle voice line. Even the news of Wei La's death did not show him shock. The loyal and honest prince, who had no opinion, was as if he had lost his soul after his father died, and he was at a loss. Colin took a step forward and said, "His Royal Highness of William, this rebellion allowed Miss Villa to control the Silver Moon city of the Meladine family and whether he could continue to lead the semi-elven kingdom. Therefore, after consulting the opinions of the semi-elf aristocracy, Miss Villa decided that the Maedin family is no longer suitable for continuing to bear the heavy responsibility of the semi-elf royal family. Can you have any objection?" Prince William's body shook, and his scattered eyes finally had focal lengths. He looked up at Villa, looked at Queen Aisha, and finally turned to look at Colin. Colin's face is sinking, his eyes are cold. I don't know why, Prince William suddenly felt that he seemed to return to the nightmare night yesterday, when the devil fell from the sky and twisted his father's head. So, the semi-elf prince finally stunned to the ground, shivering. No objection. This chapter is finished. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 130. Chapter 130 Clearance. The coup came rapidly and ended very fast. As if the storm in the summer, one without paying attention, the world was washed again, and changed the world. Regarding the royal family's initiative to abandon the royal power, Queen Aisha inherited the throne and became Queen Aisha. Most of the semi-elf civilians had no opinion. The political struggle of the nobles has always had nothing to do with them. Moreover, for the semi-elf family who worships good things, Queen Aisha, the natural fragrance of the country, is much more pleasing to King Edwin. If the Poles are here at this time, Queen Aisha's support rate will undoubtedly crush the Maedin family. For the semi-elf aristocracy, although this coup had a huge impact on them, no one dared to stand up and question Queen Aisha at this time. In their opinion, Vera's attitude is the attitude of the Duke of St. Hilda. Since the Duke of the North believes that the Miller family is more suitable for becoming a semi-elf royal family, what can they do? If the East messenger stands up and questions, maybe some political speculators still want to follow behind, but now, the Eastern messenger is gone, and the semi-elf aristocracy naturally dare not squeak. However, although Aisha has inherited the semi-elf king position, the coronation ceremony could not be performed for a while. Because it is qualified to crown Queen Aisha, only the Glory Empire royal family, the St. Lorenzo family. Queen Aisha has sent messengers to Yulong City. If no accident, the St. Lorenzo family will soon send minions to come to crown Queen Aisha. In the palace's main hall, Colin was sitting on the throne with grin, as if he was the real king. Queen Aisha was reported to Colin with a respectful face. The Unyu Guard has basically cleared, and the officers of the Maedwin family were surrendered and replaced the people of the Miller family. However, this time the Unyu Guard has lost heavy losses, and it has been less than 20,000 after the retraction. Because the Maedin family took the initiative to give up, it saved us a lot of trouble, so I plan to award the title of Duke William Midwin, so that they can also soothe people by the way and show their kindness. However, the rat family who participated in the rebellion did not deserve this kindness. They would be deprived of all places and Jones, and the Duke of Little would be sentenced to hanging. The Hyacnical's Chamber of Commerce have been forcibly closed, and members of the Sevo family will be forcibly deported. In addition, the assets of the Lutter family and the Shangzhenzi Chamber of Commerce are listed here, as well as the assets of the semi-elf state treasury. You can see it. Clinton was interested and quickly looked at it. These are just a rough number. I am afraid that it will take a few days to get a few days before you can be counted. Okay, Colin looked at the last number that made him dizzy, and he was almost out of emotional. I knew the wealth of the semi-elf kingdom, but I did not expect that it was so rich. He suddenly felt that he no longer had to worry about the military expenses of the dream of the dream of the dream. With the cash cow of the elf kingdom, maybe even if his territory in the north no longer expands, he can also raise tens of thousands of cavalry. Therefore, what Colin wants to do now is to hold this shaking money in his own hands, and you can't let anyone die. Even the Duke of St. Hilda can't. By the way, the Black Army should be about to enter, you send someone to welcome it. Okay. Before the Colin made an envoy, he explained the housekeeper Yemen. He sent a letter back every 5 days, and if he did not receive his letter on time for more than 3 days, Yemen immediately notified the Marquis of Garcia. After Villa's death, the Meadwin family blocked Union City, thinking that it could cut off the connection between Colin and the outside world. But they didn't know at all. There was no connection, but it was actually a connection. Now calculating the time, the Black Cavalry is almost reaching the realm of the semi-elf kingdom. When Marquis in Garcia arrived in Union City, Colin felt that he had many things to discuss with the other party. Especially the Duke of St. Hilda repeatedly compatible, this time even conspiracy to assassinate Vera. This is absolutely unbearable. Colin believes that as long as the Marquis of Garcia stands on his side, the Duke of St. Hilda is not afraid. Oh yes, you can handle the staff for me and exchange it with gold coins. Colin gave Earl Evan's staff to Queen Aisha. Yes. A few words of Queen Aisha made her stabilize the situation of the semi-elf kingdom, and Colin walked out of the palace. All the way to the royal garden. It has not been fully packed here, and the residual branches are still seen everywhere, and the crushed petals on the ground can be seen everywhere. But even so, Colin still feels pleasing to the eye because Vera is in the garden. At this time, Vera was sitting in the middle of the garden. The bright morning light sprinkled on her through the gap between the leaves, forming a mottled light and shadow of the stars. The morning dew was not completely disappeared. In the faint mist, Vera's gorgeous face was looming. Several flower spots and butterflies rose lightly on her body, but she frowned tightly, as if he was deeply trapped in a melancholy mood, and he had no time to take care of him. What are you thinking about? Colin walked over, stretched out Vera's brow, and seemed to want to help her to flatten this trouble. Wyra did not dodge the intimacy of Colin, nor did he want to worry Colin, so he barely smiled. Actually nothing, just thinking that that night, some persons had said to me in this garden. Who? It is the leader of the rebels, named Sissi. I heard that he was the descendant of the Sevo family of the semi-elf royal family. What did he tell you? Colin had understood what Vera was worried, but he pretended not to know. After all, Vera didn't know that the knight was also present. He said. Vera frowned again. He said he was instructed by his father and came to assassinate me. So what do you think? Colin's eyes were deep and asked slowly, do you believe in your father or the enemy? Vera crooked his head, as if he finally woke up. Of course it's father. The girl's mood immediately became cheerful again. I'm so stupid, so simple, problem is so tangled. It must be that Sissi deliberately cheated me. Colin, help me push Chujian. Colin smiled and helped Vera push. Looking at the girl's innocent smile, he suddenly dispelled the idea of telling the other party. Not just do not want these dirty things to defile the beauty in front of you. Because he suddenly realized that if he wanted to tell Vera everything, he must be clear about the complex grievances between the Duke of St. Hilda and the Marquis of Garcia. In this way, he must tell Vera's true identity. But this was banned by Marquis in Garcia. Therefore, Colin intends to wait for the Marquis of Garcia to arrive in Union City, and then he decides whether to confess everything to Vera. Gig, Colin, do you also sit up too? Good. Of course, Colin would not refuse such an invitation, leaping around, and squeezed Chiu-Chien lightly, sitting together with Vera. The familiar fragrant atmosphere rushed to his face and drilled deep into his heart. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Ludo Busroot. Chapter 131. Chapter 131 Killing, Part 1. Xiaoxi's autumn wind rolled up the leaves, and there were few street passers-by in Union City. I have just experienced a tragic coup, and this semi-elf king city is still in military control. The slave market in the west of the city has no prosperity of the past. The Hyakane Chamber of Commerce has long been surrounded by the all-armed semi-elven guards and kept moving out of various things from it. In a dark alley away from the Chamber of Commerce, Rose Sivy revealed his head sneakily and carefully observed the situation of his own Chamber of Commerce. Obviously, the situation is not good. Since his brother's skull landed in the palace from the sky, Rose knew that the operation of the Sivy family failed again. However, he was not too desperate, because Queen Aisha did not kill the Sivy family, but just expelled the country. The semi-elf aristocracy also has a tradition of forgive losers. What's more, for the Miller family, not only did they not hate the Sivy family, but thanked them. If they had not launched the coup, the semi-elf king would not be able to reach them. However, although the Sivy family was kept, the assets were obviously collected. Rose sighed and looked at the last glance of the Hyaknical Chamber of Commerce, and turned to leave. But as soon as he turned his head, he saw a black-robed man standing quietly in the shadow behind him, watching him coldly. "Mister, how did you come to Union City?" A ridiculous sneer at the corner of Mr. Yan's mouth. "Why, can't I come? Of course, just you can see that our family has just been in trouble, so I can't entertain you." Mr. ignored Ross's politeness, but asked straightly, "Do you know why you failed?" Rose shook his head and asked respectfully, "Please advise." "Because you are too greedy." There was also a trace of anger on Rose's face, as if the backlog of resentment and fear in the past few days suddenly broke out. "Do it according to your explanation, mister. You were not in Union City at that time. Where do you know what we are facing? The development of the matter is beyond everyone's expectations, and my brother and I can only respond randomly." "Random response," Mr. Yan smiled. "I still heard someone describing betrayal for the first time." "Betrayal?" Rose also seemed to be out, and he roared angrily, "Do you really think that our Sive family or a dog raised by your family? Wake up! It's no longer 300 years ago. You have become a dog yourself. You can only rely on the support of the trolls to stretch. Still expecting our loyalty? When do you dare not wear that damn hood when you appear in the sun? Come and talk to our Siva family to talk about loyalty." Facing Ross's harsh ridicule, Mr. Yan was not angry, but sighed, and said leisurely, "Yeah, it has been more than 300 years. This world is almost forgotten my family." The former loyal servants also began to find another way, and left the past vows. Suddenly, Mr. Yan suddenly laughed. "However, I actually didn't expect your loyalty from the beginning. After the lesson of the last northern border, I have understood that the vow is ridiculous, loyal, and just the bubbles in the sun. It looks dazzling, but it is actually vulnerable." Mr. Yan took a few steps forward, and his smile became brighter. "But I think the most ridiculous is you. You think you are smart, you don't want to be a pawn, and you want to be a chess player. But in fact, you can't see the chess game at all, and you don't even know where the real chess eye is. Mr. S words made Ross hear a fog, and he didn't understand what he meant. But Mr. Yan didn't seem to expect him to understand at all, as if he just said to himself, "You only see this Union City in your eyes, only to stare at the semi-elf king. Hee, but how can these unrelated things be qualified to become the real focus of this game of chess?" Rose probably understood this time, but this feeling of being despised made him even more angry. He couldn't help but ridicule again. Now the overall situation of Union City has been determined, what can you do? The overall situation has been determined. Mr. 11 laughed and shook his head. My killing tricks have not been released yet, and, it's not to tell you, Union City is just a small corner in the chessboard, and decide can't the victory of this game of chess. Oh, what is your killing trick? The more Ross looks at the more unpleasant, the more he watched the magical Mr. Cunn. My killing tricks, Mr. Halfley, the voice suddenly lowered, and the words in the mouth became confusing. Rose didn't hear clearly, and took 2 steps forward curiously. He just wanted to ask inquiries, but found that he couldn't speak. He just felt like a burnt charcoal in his throat, so that he almost spit out the fire. The next second, he really spit out the fire. Then, the fire quickly lit his face, his head, his neck, and spread to the whole body. In the end, Rose turned into a pile of ashes in the painful struggle. My killing tricks, you are not qualified to know yet. Mr. 11 sneered, his gaze passed through the dark alley, looking at the direction of the north. In the north, the Eagle City fell. The fat merchant Oliver swept a luxurious woman in the Tulip Chamber of Commerce. Ms. Penny, we can't go on like this, covering those foods and not selling them, although we can earn a lot of money on food prices, but I am afraid that we can't live this money. Penny's red eyes stared at Oliver coldly, asking, what are you afraid of? Don't worry, there is me, the Earl will not arrest you with the crime of hoarding food. For this, Oliver believes? After all, the other party is the most loved lover of the Count Umon, and naturally he is sure to make the count. However, Oliver still said urgently, Ms., I'm not worried about the Earl. What are you worried about? I am worried about the slaves and civilians who are about to be hungry. Do you know that in the spring of this spring, the giants invaded, and a large number of fields missed spring plowing? Now the famine has begun to spread in the north. At this time, we would not sell food at this time, for fear of, I'm afraid it would be starved. A group of slaves and pariah, died and died. Penny looked unmoved, as if she was no longer the same class. Ms., have you been hungry? Oliver began to be impatient, and some words were no longer covered. I have been hungry, and, I know that kind of taste is better than death. It can make people crazy, beasts, and terrible to devour everything. Penny looked at Oliver coldly and laughed. Continue to say it. Oliver hesitated for a moment, but still didn't dare to say. Isn't it a rebellion? Penny said easily. Since you know, why? Take care of yourself, Mr. Oliver, you won't be hungry. Penny patted Oliver's rolling fat face and said again. But if you do what you should not do, that's not necessarily. This chapter is finished.